Okay, now we're going to install the inlays. This is just a piece of mother of pearl. It's about a 1 by 2 inch piece, which is about 2.5 by 5 centimeters. Now I'm going to start by just taking some small pieces of tape and marking the frets that I want the inlays on. Traditionally, this is the 3rd, the 5th, the 7th, 9th, 12th, and then the 15th, 17th, 19th, and 21st. And this way, you don't mess up and start cutting on a fret that's not supposed to be inlaid. Now this I'm going to put on just a scrap piece of wood, and I've got the size of the fret marked, or the inlay, and I'm just going to square it off here, and I'm going to score it with an X-Acto knife. Then I'm just going to take a mini hacksaw blade and cut it the rest of the way through. Okay, now that we've got our piece, this is going to be sort of a trapezoid shape, where I'm going 1/4 of an inch in on each side of the bottom, which is about 6 millimeters. And then I'm just going to draw in a diagonal and then I'm just going to take the hacksaw and cut off those little corner edges. And just flip it over and do the other side. And here you have the finished inlay. Okay, now I'm going to spray a little spray adhesive on the back of the inlay. Give it a little second there to dry. And then I'm going to mark the center point of the fret that it goes in. And then I'm going to mark the center line on the inlay. Now I'm just going to line the two up and press it into place there, so the spray adhesive will hold it down. Then I'm just going to take a pencil and draw the outline . Just get as close as you can in there. I'm going to shade this in here just so you can see it on camera. And there's their shape. And now I'm going to take an X-Acto knife. or a razor knife. I'm just going to start to cut that shape out, outline the shape just inside that pencil line. And I'm using a triangle on these longer cuts. And this will just sort of make it easier to cut out without breaking into the grain outside the inlay. You don't have to go real deep with those initial cuts. And I'm just going to start working along those edges, carving out some of the depth there. And once you've got the outside edges shaped in, you can work in those corners, get those nice and sharp. You can see how I've got the outside edges deepened. And now we're just going to start on the interior of the shape. I'm going to do that with a little bit of a chisel since these are the little larger pieces. Just go nice and slow here. You don't want to chip off anything that's outside of the shape. You can see I'm just taking off little bitty shavings at a time. I'm just turning it around to do it on the other side. And just be careful not to go too deep. You don't want to go deeper than the thickness of the inlay. You want it to protrude above the surface just a little bit. I'm just going to take the razor knife and clean up some of that excess wood there by the sides. And then test your fit. Make sure that the inlay will go in, but again, don't go so deep. You may have to make some little adjustments where you didn't get quite up to the pencil line. And it should press in fairly snug once you've got the fit right. And if not, just keep making little adjustments. And a lot of times, sort of the sharp points there can be little trouble spots. You want to make sure you get those nice and smooth. I think we've got it in there. It's a good fit. And now continue this process all the way down for all the inlays. And I actually like to number them on what fret they're going on so that I keep them in order. They progressively get smaller, but sometimes it's easy to confuse two that are side by side. And you can see that we've got all of our cutouts done. And you might note on the 12th fret I made a little different shape here. Where I just made a double point instead of like a double dot that you would normally see. Now I'm taking this is what's called a plastic trim adhesive that's actually used in automobile trim pieces to glue those plastic parts on various locations on a automobile. They actually work really good with the mother of pearl. I just took a cotton swab there and removed any excess glue that came out. I'm going to take some scrap wood there and a little spring clamp and just hold it in place. That particular glue dries in about 5 minutes. So while that's drying, I'm just going to keep moving down the fretboard, repeating that process. Now once you've got them all done, I like to just let it set up for 24 hours before we actually start working them, so that the epoxy reaches its full strength. Now I'm using our 12-inch radius sanding block and some sandpaper. It's 100 grit paper. Something between 100 grit and 150 will work good. I'm just applying some spray adhesive so I can stick it to the radius sanding block. Okay, now I'm just going to slowly start to sand down the inlays. Now you can see here that the dust is really just the inlays. You shouldn't be biting into the fretboard at all. The inlays should be raised enough that they won't let the sandpaper hit the fretboard. And now you'll continue sanding until when you start to see sawdust from the fretboard, you should know that you're getting to the finishing stages. Just lightly sand it until everything's nice and flush. Now just make sure that your inlays are all flush. And then I'm going to switch to 180 grit paper just to do a finish sand.